But
Yep.
I think that you just mentioned something that kind of caught my attention when you said conquering your fear. What if we did something like that? Maybe this could be a conquering your fear episode.
Yeah, that it sounds like a great idea because, you don't have to limit it to just podcasting. It
Right.
can be stepping out on the ledge, whatever it is. We can all relate to somebody who went out and conquered a fear and then went ahead and did something anyway.
This is Podcast by Friday with Kingsley and Bill Griggs, where we help you to create your minimal viable podcast by taking bold action to defeat procrastination and get your voice heard. And on today's show, which is episode number 3, we'll be talking about conquering your fear as you are in the process of launching your very own and possibly first podcast. There are things that you're experience that are fear-based. And the possible, how do you get past that hump? That is what we're going to look about today as you listen in on Bill and I having a conversation about the launch process and what we were doing and how it's almost like we're inviting you in to have a bird's eye view, like a fly in the wall, listening in and watching as we talk about our own experience as we launch Podcast by Friday. In this segment, you're going to hear a flow of consciousness as we begin just to put ideas out there and talk about the editing process and what that is like.
Getting the first 6 minutes of that podcast or 7 minutes, however.
Imagine, I know the amount of work it do to get a shorter podcast is a lot more than to do a longer podcast.
Yeah, and there was a lot of editing going on in there.
That's what I'm thinking.
Trying to string it all together because we were just doing, flow of consciousness. Whatever was on our mind was what we were talking about.
That's what I think. When I listened to it, I said, "Yeah, that was a flow of consciousness." But you did a great job, though, in trying to put all that together, man. So that's kudos to you on that. Editing a podcast can be labor intensive and time consuming. And sometimes there might need to be, if you can get someone to do it for you and outsource that, it might be helpful. But here's what it is as we continue in this journey of conquering our fear as we talk about the editing process.
After, hustling to try and get that out on Friday, it was like, okay, my mind's not going to focus. And so finally it is now. And I was trying to see where I wanted to go with the next couple of sections of that because, there was no mention of us going out on the ledge, which was what. and that could be, to me, that could be a podcast by itself about, it could be a topic of going to start something by going out on the ledge, and then you are looking for and hoping to get from that. But I think that you just mentioned something that kind of caught my attention when you said conquering your fear. What if we did something like that? Maybe this could be a conquering your fear episode, and we just briefly talk about some things and introduce that, and you could splice in, or give me whatever case might be those interviews, just inside that, as far as hear what some other people are saying about conquering your fears. Here's what we did, and just make it a podcast. Yeah, that it sounds like a great idea because. You don't have to limit it to just podcasting.
Right.
It can be stepping out on the ledge, whatever it is. We can all relate to somebody who went out and conquered a fear and then went ahead and did something anyway. I'm sure the first time Batman jumped off a building, he.
Well, I think
should this be a good idea?
I think we're a case in point. We kind of conquered our fear by doing the ledge thing and the Sears Tower, so we could use that as, I think it could be an episode right there. You are beginning to get an idea of our flows, how we were flowing, and just have our our stream of consciousness, actually, as we talked about earlier. But here's where it all began. Well, actually, not all began, but a part of it began when we had gone to Chicago and had decided to go to the Sears Tower and go on the ledge on the 103rd floor of the Sears Tower.
Man, this is quite something on the 103rd floor of the Sears Tower. What are you thinking so far, Kingsley? What's your impression?
It's impressive. It was amazing. The construction, the thought process, the brainstorming, the ideas that went behind to put this together. It's just mind blowing. The amazing part is to see how they use those. I think it's called the those not canisters, but
the poles.
Yeah, the poles, right? And to be able to think about how they could build around that to support a building this size, which tells me what's so important to anything you're building. You must have a strong foundation. You must have a well thought out foundation. Like if you don't have that, you can build something and it crumbles because it's going to be exposed to all kinds of stuff. And if the foundation is not right, it won't stand.
Yeah.
Let me say that if you ever make it to Chicago, that you do take a time to go and visit the Sears Tower. And make sure you go on the ledge. And now what you're going to hear us talk about is having conquered our fear. Well, what are 3 steps that you could also utilize in conquering your fear? Again, this came out of our constant brainstorming and talking about the podcast. And you might find that different things click at different times that you can use in your episode when it comes to your turn.
Well, we're still in the early stages of this podcast, about,
Oh, that's true.
bold action.
Yeah. Implied.
And people are still not convinced. They have to conquer their fear before they'll take action. Mm-hmm. Because what happens when you conquer fear? You're looking at some great task that seems insurmountable, and then you make a decision to try it anyway.
Mm. Okay.
And then take the action and do it. So there, it's like a 3-step process because first you recognize what that fear is, then you make a decision to go beyond that fear, and then you actually do it.
Okay.
So, right now we're in the 2nd step.
Okay. So I'm hearing there's 3 steps you just defined as the way to conquer your fear, especially in launching your podcast. This episode then is going to be 3 steps to conquer your fears.
Yeah. If you were breaking it down to verbs, it would be recognize, decide, and act.
Okay. Take action.
Yeah. Well, act.
Act is habit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, there's probably other words that could make some fancy acronym, and somebody who, had a lot of time on their hands could go and figure that out. Those are the verbs are doing words, words that have action or motion, and those are the 3 verbs.
There comes a time in our journey that we have to take that leap. We call it the jump, and the jump may not look like every other person's jump. Yours and mine and Bill's is going to look a bit different every time, and so don't try to compare your jump with someone else's jump. The important thing is that you do jump.
That is one of the things I discuss in my book, the chapter 10, about taking the plunge. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is this guy who jumped off the 33 feet cliff into the water. When I saw him did it, when I saw the other people who had gone ahead of me, jumped off, that only gave me courage. The problem was the guy who was before me, he turned back after he looked over the cliff and said, "Man, I can't do it." And he walked off that cliff and didn't do it. But his wife behind him, who was next in line, and I was third, she went and she did not hesitate too long, right? Which was the trick part, was don't think about it too long. Mm-hmm. And when she jumped, it only kind of buoyed my confidence one more. She can jump. She's shorter than I am, smaller than I am, even though her husband did not. So I decided, well, you know what? Hey, I'm not going to let this lady who was smaller than me, and to me, I'll be embarrassed. I would feel like, oh no, her ego, right? So when and she jumped, I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to jump, and I just went up there, and I didn't think too long about it, and I jumped. And my whole point of that chapter is, it doesn't matter how you jump, because the guy who was showing us and was our guide, he just jumped head first like an eagle, going, soaring down and just cutting that water like butter, right? And so when I jumped, I'm thinking, well, hey, what's the difference? We both landed in the water. We both had the experience. We may have gone in different ways, but we both experienced what it felt like to jump.
In my book, The Midlife Launch, there is a chapter that continues or talks about the jumping process. And listen to Bill as he read a section from that chapter in my book, The Midlife Launch. Chapter 10.
So, as we reached the edge of the cliff, which was very safe because of these huge stone barriers that you could lean on to look over into the water, we could see a stairway leading down the cliff. And this stairway led to a point that you could have a closer view of the ocean. And these steps were carefully and securely placed in carved out sections of the rock. Yeah, I like the next chapter, or the next paragraph. Only those who felt brave enough, even though it was very safe, would walk down these steps for their closer view. Mm-hmm. They were the steps that those who decided to take the 33-foot leap would climb to get back to the top of the cliff. Mm-hmm. There was also an aluminum-type ladder that led out to the water for the jumpers to grab onto and pull themselves up onto the steps. Those of us who decided to take the leap were huddled around our guide, who was giving us safety tips and would soon demonstrate to us how to safely jump into the sleeping ocean down below us.
The style or the format of the show that you determine will look or sound like other podcasts to some degree, but you have to decide what fits you best and what you have the bandwidth to work around or work with, because it's how you decide. It's the kind of show that you want that matters most. It's not what others are necessarily doing. What fits your style and what are you most comfortable with?
And we don't even have to stick with this style of show,
right,
that I've started. I kind of like the way it's flown, but it's not. We're not trying to be NPR, and it actually does take
a lot of work. I can imagine.
Yeah, because you have to find topic breaks. Where somebody makes an important point, or concludes a thought before you break in with the music to go to the next vignette, and that. It takes a little bit of time. Sometimes you have to listen to it. And sometimes things, the way they were recorded sequentially, don't work. So there are entire portions of the conversation that we had that get eliminated or get moved somewhere else where they make more sense.
Depending on the kind of week you might have or the day you might have, things may not go as planned. As you'll find out here, we were down to the wire. Actually, Bill was doing the editing, and he was down to the wire right up until the almost 11:59th hour. But here's how that sounds.
I made a conscious decision as the process was going on. When it got to be 11 p.m., and I was still, I had chopped up sound bites, basically, for the episode, and I had them all laid out on one track. And I was going through and removing things like what I just said, and from various parts in that conversation, and then realizing that realistically, I did not need to do that. I did not need to remove the and ums, because that's the way we speak.
Yeah.
It was taking a lot of time to do that. And as I was getting closer and closer, I said, well, I can release a perfect episode, which is 20 minutes long, has all these sections that I've already outlined. Or I can release whatever I get to at 11:50. Because I know it was going to take time for me to convert it to an MP3 and to upload it to Spreaker. And I wanted to have our first episode out. I wanted our first podcast by Friday.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in a co-hosting situation, the chance is you're going to be sending files or videos or whatever else, video files or audio files or just text files to each other. And how do you do that? What's the best way? Especially when those files could be quite large. You've got to figure out how that will be done, and also how and where you will store that data. Again, listen in on how we kind of free talked about what we will be doing.
You really want to keep the originals of your, not the working files, but the edited version that we put when we're done.
Right.
You want to keep them somewhere so that if you decide to switch services later, or if something catastrophic happens, like Spreaker goes out of business, or whoever.
Where I store my file is in Carbonite, and Carbonite is like $69 for the year. I think it's $69 or $59 for the year. So all my backup is in Carbonite, which is in the cloud. That's where I store all my file. But I know that iCloud also have that, where you can store files for several gigs, but Carbonite is my backup go-to. So you could say, conquer your fears.
Stop right there.
Okay.
They don't have to be that tight together.
That's true. You're right.
Conquer your fears.
Okay.
That can stand on its own. We don't have to worry about the ledge.
Right.
They'll get that from. We're going to burn through 2 gigs pretty quick, I think, with audio clips. So we ought to think about, let's buy a solution somewhere. For this, if we're doing this, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And
what if we could create a Dropbox file, just about and use that to send back and forth, and then delete once we're finished. So we could set a Dropbox just for that.
Yeah, a beginning podcaster would not know the difference between where they have their audio and where they have their website. Common thought is, well, I'll just throw my podcast file up on my website like I do all my other.
Yeah, that's true.
And they instantly get throttled at the host provider when they get, hundreds and thousands of downloads of that file.
And start slowing down.
Yeah. So, that's why they have solutions like Libsyn and
right.
Because
I store my because also Libsyn is, again, but the only thing that, like you said, it's Libsyn is their platform. Whereas, like, for example, iCloud, Carbonite, those are like,
yes,
it's something you can always have wherever you go.
Yes, and that's for storing your file,
right?
Not for providing your RSS feed.
Exactly.
And the RSS feed is what gets hit every time somebody downloads or streams. Yeah,
right.
So.
Again, going back to the idea of a flow of consciousness, as we kind of brain dumped and talked about what are some things that are required for this new show, we're putting together a to-do list. What are some things we might possibly be thinking of that we need to make a part of this show? And you as you listen, you too are going to have this. You're going to have this situation where you will be either have it with someone else or by yourself. Just taking some time to brain dump. And here's how our brain dumping, our stream of consciousness sound, and how it might be on your side as well.
And the webpage.
Yeah, and the webpage and, all of that. So the web page is probably, of all of the things that we have to do, probably the easiest, because profit builder. And we've already got the colors figured out.
Right.
So what we are missing from the web page is a logo.
Okay.
For the page. We can launch without one, but something that we need to think about for the future. For the Podcast by Friday logo, I was leaning towards that calendar that you had.
I like the idea.
Similar,
Yeah.
You had to determine at the very beginning whether or not you are going to find a way to monetize what it is your business is all about. Remember, your podcast, well, from our point of view, is a means to an end. It's not the business. It helps in the business. But around the podcast, you have to decide what will be the other avenues or streams that will bring in an income. And don't feel bad about thinking that way. It's part of a business. Because if it's not, then you are in a hobby. And here's what we were thinking, and we were, again, just flowing with ideas. We thought this might be helpful to include this in this episode so you can hear that when your turn comes, you won't feel bad about doing it, and you may have an idea of what to model your own conversation with.
To anyone who might listen to this later and think, wow, they're really capitalistic or whatever, it's not that. It's the fact that these podcasts are a lot of work.
Yeah.
Giving away very good information. And they cost something for us to put together. For instance, when we get the Dropbox and we get AWeber or whoever, those are monthly fees and things that pop up. So if we're businessmen, which I am, and
I am,
then we owe it to our company to treat it as a business right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And to do whatever we can to make sure that, there is a bottom line.
Yeah.
So I have no problem whatsoever with affiliate links, particularly since it doesn't cost the person who buys an affiliate product a dime for me to get my commission. It doesn't cost them a penny.
Right.
That's all something that the companies worked out with their, as part of their advertising. So I see no reason why we shouldn't have affiliate links to products that we know are good and that we use and that sort of thing. Or products that aren't affiliate but are, real products like, FreshBooks or QuickBooks or, whatever. Camtasia Studio that I bought the other day,
Yeah.
I know they're good.
And see, it takes money to run a business, and for us to bring value and better service to our our clients, or our customers, or our people, our audience, is we need to always try to find the best ways to how can we get the best possible service. Mm-hmm. To get the best possible service, it costs to get that. So I think it's really, and people understand. They understand you've got to spend money to make money, and you have to have money to spend to make money. So if you don't, you have no business. You only have an expensive hobby, that we've heard many times.
Yep. So, if we treat this as a business right from the beginning, we should be golden. It's just such a broad topic. Or, excuse me, not topic, but has a broad appeal to people who want to get started podcasting. that there's no reason why it shouldn't be able to pay for itself.
I agree. Boom.
I hope you got some value from this show as you listened to Bill and I talk through the process. And these are some of the things you're going to hear on subsequent episodes. And we just want to make sure that you continue to listen and also to interact with us. Let us know what this show means to you. Don't forget to check out the show and subscribe to the show. It will be going to iTunes soon, and we want you to go there and leave some rating and review. But also, if you have a question, would you send us that to the email address podcast@podcastbyfriday.com. Just send it to podcast@podcastbyfriday.com. We would love to hear from you and to see what other things you would like to know that we could share with you and we could help you with, or we could point to some resource, because we don't have all the answers, but we might know where to find the answers. If we can help you also in some coaching, we would love to also make ourselves available to you. So just email us at podcastbyfriday.com, and we'll be more than happy to get back with you and in some way give you the response that hopefully that you're looking for. Look forward to having you with us on our next episode. Make sure you tell at least 2 people about this podcast. And don't forget, it's all about you getting your show out as soon as possible. Remember, Podcast by Friday is here to help you create your minimal viable podcast by taking bold action to defeat procrastination and get your voice heard. That is what we're all about. Let us help you accomplish your dream of having your podcast by Friday. See you next time.